Yeah, it's an interesting one really because you know, nobody ever really thinks about retiring so early. So I finished playing football, got injured for the last time the day after I turned 30. And obviously I'm hoping to live, you know, a long life. And you're thinking, I've got a lot of time here, many years, hopefully. What am I going to do? So I think it was natural to step into the media side of things with football. Being a Welsh language speaker, first language is Welsh. Stepping into the media world was quite an easy step initially, but then obviously I couldn't rely on football punditry for the rest of my life. So I think stepping into the entertainment world of the media industry was something that I never really envisioned, something I never really thought would happen. But I'm glad that I've stepped into that side of things, because it's quite a nice feeling not to be relying on football for everything in everything that I do. So yeah, happy to be in the media industry, and hopefully there's more things to come. Yeah, definitely good and bad really. You know, I think the reality is we all change, and you know, I can only speak for myself. You mature as you get a little bit older, your views and your thoughts change a little bit. I've definitely seen people and players who in the dressing room maybe were quiet, and then all of a sudden they become this big voice, controversial voice that throw crazy things out there, and you think that's not really you. But they're probably out there looking for work, and they think, I have to be this certain way if I'm going to get on this channel or that channel. It's a murky world, if you like, because that's probably against my thoughts and my principles, in that I'm never going to be somebody who says something just for the sake of it and just to get a headline, or to maybe think that's going to lead to more work if I'm seen as this controversial figure. Other people tend to go down that road. Each to their own. Not really. It's quite a scary thing to do initially. You know, you're used to playing football and that's it. You grow up kicking a ball, that's all you know. And then all of a sudden you do a few interviews and this and that, and you have to be quite serious. And I think towards the end, getting into punditry and there's a camera on you, you're worried. So initially you've got no opinion, if you like. You're quite grey, quite, you know, sitting on the fence, if you like. So it takes a little bit of time for you to feel comfortable in front of that camera. So for me, looking at from the outside, I don't think I was looking at any pundits thinking I'm going to be like this guy or the next. I think presenter-wise, which is probably more the pathway I'm on now, Gary Lineker's the obvious one. You know, Lineker was a top player, played at a much higher level than I did, but then he's veered onto this other pathway. You know, he's better as a presenter than he was as a pundit, if you like. And that's somebody that I probably look at now and think, not that I'm going to present Match of the Day one day, but it's one of those where sometimes you need to see someone being successful doing something to know, yeah, do you know what, I can get on that pathway, I can do something similar. So yeah, Lineker is probably the obvious one for me. Certainly in front of the camera, you're not seeing the real personalities. You know, that's trained out of players, and there's a real reason for that. You know, it's very difficult as someone on the outside. You want to see these personalities. You think, there's no characters in football anymore. There is. We just don't get to see them in the interviews. And the reason for that is if a player says one thing out of line, that's a headline. That's used in the dressing room, the opponent's dressing room, as a, you know, look what this guy said last week. We're going to use that as fuel, kind of thing. So there's a reason behind it, yes, but it is a shame because you want to see these characters in football. They are still there. It's harder to find these days. A little bit. I think the main thing is, you know, most of those players have retired, so you can almost become a character once again. You don't have so much fear of saying something wrong and, you know, your manager giving you a row or whatever it may be. I think social media plays a big part. If you want to portray your true personality, you can use your own personal Instagram or whatever you use. And I just think the landscape of media is always changing. It's interesting because I think if you see the traditional style of a presenter, a couple of pundits, and speak quite blandly, those days are, you know, they haven't gone yet. But you see the likes of, you mentioned Carragher, Micah Richards, Henry on the Champions League nights in the work that they do. it's changing because people want entertainment. People want to see the clips on social media that make them laugh, that engage with them. So it's ever changing, definitely, and it's always a task to stay ahead of the game, if you like. Yeah, this is an interesting one really, because we've just mentioned 𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍 and Thierry Henry, those three together, brilliant. I think Gary Neville, in fairness, changed the game with Carragher on Sky. I'd have to go Keane, I think. Love Roy Keane, but I love his partnership with Ian Wright. You know, you see the real personality these days because of the overlap and the things that they do. You know, Keane is not as angry as maybe he portrays. There's a humour there that we've had an insight into more recently. I think somebody like him, brilliant, because he'd always keep you on your toes. You know, if you said something bland, he'd out you. So yeah, it'd be a bit of fun, I'm sure, working alongside him. Yeah, I've mentioned the fact that it's difficult because you don't know what you're going to do, so everything's just trial and error, if you like. So the natural thing to do is to step into coaching, and loads of players do it because football is all we know, the majority of us. So it's that period where there's a lot of the unknown. So I dabbled, I went on the coaching courses to start with. I did my personal training courses, thinking that might be a source of income. The telly stuff was taking care of itself. It was slowly snowballing. And it just got to a point where I prioritised that over coaching. Because it's one of those things, you're on the coaching badges, you're doing your A licence, it takes a lot of time. You know, time on the pitch and learning how to coach, and also loads of paperwork. And by the time I had to get my paperwork in, I'd got the job with Henno, and the coaching was lower on my priority list. And quite simply, it's because I made a decision. I didn't really want to think about football 24 hours a day, which is what you have to do if you want to be a top coach, a top manager. It's constant. You know, I quite like doing my work, pressure environment, yes, but I quite like switching off as well, and I don't think you could do that as a football coach. Yeah, do you know what, it was unbelievable. I'd had 4 years at Bangor, started off as a 16, 17-year-old for the first year, and then years 2 and 3, injuries, knee surgery, broken foot a couple of times. And then the 4th season was the season that I needed really with Bangor, where I kind of broke through. I was made captain and was probably standing out and thinking the time is now for the jump. But you still need an opportunity. I'd had trials with clubs that were too big really. You know, when I was with Bangor, I had trials with Chelsea and Aston Villa. Unbelievable experience, but probably very unlikely that one of those clubs, Abramovich had just took over at Chelsea, unlikely they were going to sign a kid from Bangor. So the opportunity to go to Swansea was perfect. They'd just been promoted from League 2 to League 1. They were moving from the 𝗍𝗓 to the Liberty Stadium, so brilliant facilities, brilliant squad of players, and I just felt ready. So initially it was a trial. I think I was given a week's trial. That week extended to a month, and Swansea were sort of taking their time over it really. And luckily I played quite well in the pre-season game, and managers from other clubs started phoning, interested. I think Tranmere, Swindon, a couple of others, and that forced Swansea's hand, if you like, to speeding things up, signed the contract, up and running, and that's all I needed really, was a foot in the door. And then as soon as you get that opportunity, it's up to you. You know, I genuinely think the football world professionally is one of the most difficult to get into. It's the most dog-eat-dog environment. You think of the amount of kids that start out playing football, loving football, wanting to be a footballer, and the stats tell you that the amount who make it is so small. The amount that then can stay there with longevity is obviously smaller still, but I just needed that foot in the door, and you know, Swansea gave me that opportunity and had some amazing experiences there with a good dressing room of players. Yeah, it's an interesting one really, because I don't really miss playing. The reality is I had, you know, a lot of injuries in my career. So by the end, I was ready to finish. So I think a lot of players, if you have one major injury after playing every game for many, many years, that's tough to deal with. I probably had many years where I was in pain every day. I'd have to go into to training early to get treatment, just to get ready to train. So every single day was a grind. And when I was injured for the last time, it was like a relief off my shoulders. It was as if, I can stop this now. Not quite realizing that it's quite a difficult transition. What am I going to do next? But for that period, I was happy to finish. And that's why I don't necessarily miss playing that much. I don't think about it too much. I still work on football, so I still get that football fix on the weekend, if you like. I will only miss it if we go on the pitch and we have a little kickabout, and then it takes me back and I think, I'm enjoying this. And I get a little bit too excited and then my knees sore for a couple of weeks. That's the only time really. When you get the ball at your feet and you think, I used to do this. It's an interesting question really, because I could go through every club. I mean, Swindon, Yeovil and Brentford were loans, so you take them out of it. Swansea was the breakthrough club, the opportunity, amazing. And you always have a soft spot for that first club, the first one that gives you an opportunity. But I needed to move to probably find my own feet as a character, because you're then seen as a proper player, if you like, as opposed to, the lad who's come from non-league. So Norwich, amazing. Inverness then, probably the smallest club that I played for, but had a brilliant time up there, up in Scotland, because it was almost a bunch of misfits. Always used to say that nobody plays for Inverness out of choice, and that's not being disrespectful, that was fact. You find yourself up in Inverness because you're either a young kid looking for an opportunity, or you're struggling for games, for fitness issues, and that was me. And we just had a real good group up there. Similar ages, similar issues, leading up to the point where you sign at Inverness, and I loved my time up there as well. So Norwich, probably the biggest club on paper that I played for, loved it. Inverness, the smallest, loved that just as much. So I value and I appreciate every club that I played for many different reasons. Never really felt that, not that I didn't feel that I belonged. You definitely have to have that little bit of arrogance maybe, or just that little bit of confidence in yourself. But I've mentioned the injuries. That was always in the back of my mind, thinking I've got to stay fit. But it's almost one of those things that I think I was able to be professional in this dog-eat-dog industry for 10 years. Managers kept signing me, even though I was playing at probably 60% for the majority. So I thought I must have something, and it was just about staying fit. So I was constantly in a battle. I look back, and one of the proudest things that I did was obviously playing for Wales a handful of times. But I never really enjoyed it at the time, because I always had a little niggling doubt. Do I deserve to be here? John Toshak was giving opportunities to young players. I was one of them. Gary Speed then came in, Chris Coleman as well. I was capped by all three. So obviously they saw something in me. But at the time, because I was struggling a little bit with fitness issues, I was constantly thinking, do I really deserve this? And I look back and you think, of course I deserved it. I just wish I had that little bit more belief at the time. But yeah, that was my experience then. But I certainly never felt, I've made it. Probably the most comfortable I felt was moving from Swansea to Norwich, because that was, Swansea were the first club that gave an opportunity. They saw me as this young player coming from the Welsh League, the 𝗢𝗄𝗏. It took moving to Norwich maybe to be respected, to get the wages that I felt I deserved at the time. And that was proper. I didn't play as much as I would have liked there, but to be part of a squad that got promoted from League One to the Championship to the Premier League back to back was incredible. May not have played as much as I would have liked, but I was certainly with the boys in every party at the end of it. It's so important. I think we talk now about mental strength. I think back then it would have been seen mental weakness, so you never spoke about it. It's as simple as that, really. So if you were suffering, you suffered in silence. There wasn't many people you could speak to. So it was probably difficult. But I do say that, all the injuries that I had, 6 surgeries on my knee, broke my foot a couple of times, other different issues, there's plenty more. It definitely helped me. I can't speak for anybody else who maybe really struggle with injuries, because it's such a lonely place. It's almost like you're just being teased. If you love your chocolate and you go to a chocolate factory and someone says, everyone else, all your mates can go and they can have whatever they want, but you got to sit there when you're starving. So it's something similar. When you're injured long term, you're still in the squad. You might go to the meetings and stuff, but then you got to watch your mates go out and play and train and have that laugh, if that makes sense. Because in the football world, you're so quickly forgotten. And if you're stuck in the rehab room or in the gym doing your physio work, and everyone else is out there bonding, they're getting closer while you're just drifting away. So really, really difficult at times, but I think it helped me develop a thick skin. It helped me mentally, certainly stepping into a different world now, thinking it can't be worse than what it was back then. So yeah, there were difficult times, but Norwich, I went to see a sports psychologist just to help with the injuries and trying to change a mentality that could help me. So there was people that you could seek, but it's good to see now that there's just plenty more avenues that people can go down in order to help them.